Today I'm going to show you 3 ways that are easy to use your sourdough starter. I love my sourdough starter. It is something that gets my attention every day, no matter what I have going on. I always have something that I need to do. I need to feed it, I need to check it, something, but there are so many amazing ways I can use my sourdough starter besides just making a regular loaf of bread. So we're going to take you through our day-to-day via the kitchen. So this morning I'm going to show you how I'm going to use our sourdough starter to make a yummy breakfast dish. Then later on today I'm going to show you how to make a biscuit that we're going to use for a slider for lunch. And then finally tonight I'm going to make some yummy focaccia that will go lovely with our spaghetti, and we'll be doing that throughout the day, and it's all easy. It's not going to take a ton of time. There are amazing sourdough recipes with lots of proofing time, many hours, but these are the easy ones, and we'll be able to do all 3 today. So join me. I will leave all the recipes in the description down below. For this recipe, the only thing that we used the flour for, it was to feed our starter. I did that before we started this little video because it takes a little time for it to be fed. When I feed my starter, it's just a little bit of flour, a little bit of water, I mix it up, and then I let it do its magic. Our starter is an amazing starter. We bought it from a lady here locally. She is the keeper of this amazing Alaskan sourdough starter. It has been a continuous starter for over 100 years, and so it's not been restarted. It has just been going, and it's been passed down, and it keeps getting fed. So this is kind of a fun starter to have. It is one of the most active, yummy starters that we have ever had and ever used, and so we take really good care of it. It's bubbling and ready to go. So I'm going to be putting together our things. So first thing I'm going to do is be putting the 6 eggs in our dish. We'll beat those together, add a few other ingredients, and then we'll be putting it in a 9-inch cast iron pan, and it will wind up in the oven. So let's get started. Alright, the eggs are all beat nice and evenly. I'm going to add our sourdough starter. So the next step, we need our 9-inch cast iron. You can use a larger cast iron if you would like more of a thin consistency to your Dutch baby, but we're going for a nice thick Dutch baby today. We're going to put 6 tablespoons of butter in this cast iron, stick it in an oven at 425, let the cast iron warm up and let the butter melt. And then we will be adding our lovely mixture to the pan. So we'll be right back. All right, this part you have to do kind of quickly because you want the pan to stay hot. The butter is melted and I kind of swirled it up onto the sides. I'm going to pour the batter right in the middle. And a little of Mom's special secret recipe syrup. And that's breakfast with sourdough starter. Welcome back. It's been a couple of hours while you were away. We did the dishes and we fed the starter and got it ready for our afternoon lunch project of making biscuits for a ham and cheese slider that I'm going to make. And hopefully I'll be ready for lunch by the time these are done, because right now I'm still really full from breakfast. It was absolutely delicious. As we get ready to make these biscuits, I want to just give you a list of the ingredients here so you know what we're working with. Once again, the recipe, you can find it down in the description below. We are using just our sourdough starter, our baking soda, some sugar, some melted butter, and some flour. Just really simple ingredients, and they're all going to go together really quickly. One of the reasons why we might choose a sourdough biscuit, and it is often a favorite of people that struggle with gluten intolerance. And the reason is because in gluten there are phytic acids, and the phytic acids actually will bond with magnesium, zinc, iron, those things, and make it so that your body can't absorb those things, and it will also make it more difficult for your body to break down gluten. In the sourdough, however, there's no yeast except for naturally occurring yeast, and it has lactobacillus in it, and that lactobacillus actually breaks down the phytic acids and it makes your body be able to process these things better. So there's so many great health benefits. You'll be able to absorb your nutrients better, you'll break down your gluten strands better, all of these things, and sourdough is just phenomenal besides just being convenient to have around. So let's get started with this. I've already put our sourdough in the bowl, and I'm just going to start adding in these other ingredients here on the side. Maybe not quite all the butter. Some sugar. I'm going to go ahead and mix these together first. And then I'm going to add flour, and I'm going to add about a cup of flour. And it'll just depend on our consistency here. It's getting nice and poofy. And you might use more flour if it's a runnier start and less flour if it's more of a doughy start. I'm just going to mix it up until it's all combined. Just started with that cup, but once again I may go up to a cup and a half depending on what it looks like here. Just going to knead it a bit. This doesn't have to be kneaded like if you were making a bread dough for a loaf of bread. We're just going to kind of knead it out a little, try to get it nice and smooth and kind of all one consistency. This just kind of finishes the mixing for the biscuit. And once I have it all smooth, I'm just going to lay it out here and we will get started cutting our biscuits. Alright, so I just grabbed my number 10 cast iron. This I just took a little bit of the leftover butter and kind of just gave it a once over. This is a really well seasoned cast iron, so it might not have needed it, but just to be sure, so we try not to get them to stick. And I'm using a wine glass just because I like the size for our biscuits. And it does a good job cutting. A lot of my things are still in storage since we're not quite finished yet here, and especially in the kitchen. And so we do a lot of making do with what we have. So I left this dough probably just under a ½ inch as I spread it out. And I'm going to stick these in. And then I'm going to recombine my dough, and I will get the rest of the biscuits cut out. So in just a minute they will be all cut out and ready to go in the oven. So the biscuits are out of the oven, and now I'm just going to cut them in half. They came out just beautiful. And just take a little serrated knife and cut them in half. And then I'm going to pop the tops off, put a little mustard on the bread, add my cheese and my ham, and then I have a yummy little concoction to drizzle on the top. Then I'm going to go back in the oven for just a few minutes. they are. Ham and cheese sliders, hot from the oven. And we're gonna take and deliver these to a few people around. So we can have a little bit of a late lunch. And then we're going to be immediately on to our focaccia so we can be ready for dinner. All right, our last recipe falls in the easy category, but it isn't quite as quick as the other ones. This one is going to take you a few more hours to do just because you have to let it proof a couple of times, but it's still super easy, and I think it still falls in the category of the quick and easy recipe. So tonight we're going to make focaccia to go with our spaghetti. This is a fabulous, versatile bread. It goes really well with all different kinds of foods, and so we're going to get started with that. We're going to start by making the sponge, get that started and let that proof for a little while, and then we're going to come back and actually make the dough using the sponge. So for this, we'll need flour, warm water, olive oil, honey. This is my uncle's honey. It's a yummy, savory honey. These bees predominantly eat off of his tomato blossoms. And our sourdough starter, and we've repurposed our wine glass, but that's for me. Alrighty, so let's get started. So this is the sponge. We're just gonna wait for the bubbles to really get active on top of the sponge before we start adding our additional ingredients for the bread. So we will be right back. All right, we're starting to lose a little light, but I hope you'll stick with us. Part of living off grid sometimes means that we're in the dark a little bit, especially this time of year. Hopefully by next winter we will have some solar installed, so that won't be a problem. But for tonight, I want to finish walking you through our focaccia. We have got our sponge started, and at the surface of our sponge I see various size of bubbles. So that tells me that it is time to start mixing our ingredients together for our bread. So I'm going to use this plastic bowl just for the sake of mixing, and then we're going to turn it out onto the board for kneading, and then we'll be putting it back in the glass bowl to let it raise for just a little while. So here we go. After we feel like we've got a nice little stretched out dough ball, we're just going to stick it back in our glass bowl that we now have coated with some olive oil so it doesn't stick to the bowl, and we're just going to leave it be. I'm going to put a little cloth over the top and we're going to let it raise for a little bit. So next time we come back, it should be raised and ready to go onto our cookie sheets. Alright, so we're coming to the end of our daylight and the end of our project. We have just a little bit more to do. Once again, there's lots of time between our steps, but our steps are short and easy. So our dough has about doubled in size. So I'm just going to grab it out of our bowl and I'm going to divide it in half. And this has a lovely kind of yellow hue to it. That's the olive oil in there. And I'm just going to kind of make sure it looks and feels nice and smooth, and you can see how that dough has just smoothed right out. Make sure we have them pretty much the same size. And take a little from this one. It doesn't have to be exact, just roughly the same. Okay, I think we're getting close here. Alright, I think we're close there. So now I'm going to take one bunch of my dough and I'm going to kind of start to flatten it out with my hands. And I've pre-prepared these cookie sheets, and there's quite a bit of oil, a little over 1/4 cup per sheet in the bottom, and I've swirled it around. We may even be adding more as we go, which you can kind of see it move across there. And I'm just going to work to press this out in the pan so it kind of fills the pan. Well, thank you for spending the day with us today. It's been a fun day. We've managed to get a lot of baking done. We're just finishing up the final bits of our focaccia tonight, and it has been rising up the sun is going down and we are just getting ready for dinner. So I'm going to do the last little bit and stick it in to bake, and as we close, we'll show you the finished product. So before we stick it in to bake, we want to make sure we dock the dough, which means we're just going to take our knuckle and put some dents in the dough. This will keep it from shrinking up in the oven. I'm just we want it to try to stay as flat as possible. And I'm not going to try to make it look super pretty, I'm just going to make it effective with my knuckle here. And that lovely olive oil has come to the top. If for some reason your dough has dried out and not much of the olive oil is at the top after this final raise, go ahead and just drizzle a little more olive oil on top. You want it to have that lovely golden olive oil look on top, and then we're just going to take and sprinkle the top with some sea salt. This is just the basic focaccia recipe. You can infuse this with herbs, you can top this with sun-dried tomatoes, you can add caramelized onions. There's so many things you can do with this recipe, but this will just go lovely with our spaghetti and help us sop up all the yummy goodness of that sauce. Once again, make sure you share this video with your friends, and we look forward to seeing you in weeks to come. We have lots of other fun things ahead. We hope you have a great week.